Welcome to Pohutukawa Coast Presbyterian at beautiful Maraidai Beach, the church anyone can come to and where you are welcome.
From him you came, helpless babe, entered our world, your glory veiled, not to be served but to serve, and give your life that we might live. This is our God, the servant's King. He calls us now to follow him, to bring our lives as a daily offering of worship to the servant's King. There in the garden of tears, my heavy load he chose to bear. His heart with sorrow was torn, yet not my will but yours, he said. This is our God, the servant's King. He calls us now to follow him, to bring our lives as a daily offering of worship to the servant King. Come see his hands and his feet, the scars that speak of sacrifice, hands that flaunt stars into space, to cruel nails surrender. This is our God, the servant's King. He calls us now to follow him, to bring our lives as a daily offering of worship to the servant King. So let us learn how to serve, and in our lives enthrone him, each other's needs to prefer, for it is Christ we're serving. This is our God, the servant King. He calls us now to follow him, to bring our lives as a daily offering of worship to the servant King. This is our God, the servant King. He calls us now to follow him, to bring our lives as a daily offering of worship to the servant's King.
There is speaking of servanthood as worship. Not what we sing, how many times we sing it, but what we do, how we relate to other people. That includes the people in our family. So This series is on seeking to become a congregation that reflects the character of Jesus. My theory, my belief for years has been that when a person comes into a congregation, they should experience being with Jesus. It should be like that. The only people that didn't like Jesus were the self-righteous people. If you read the Gospels carefully, you'll see that they're the ones that didn't like Jesus because they thought they were better than other people. And once you think you're better than someone else, religiously or whatever, you just don't. Just to recap, some of you know this, a rabbi, a teacher in Jesus' day, if you were going to follow a rabbi, you were required to spend all your time with him. It is a him because there was no women rabbis in those days, although Jesus did try to introduce them. But you had to spend your whole time with the rabbi and imitate his lifestyle, his words, and his actions. And in those days, with dusty roads, etc., when you walked along, you would kick up dust. So when you were a disciple of a rabbi, you were said to have had the dust of the rabbi, whoever, on you, because you're walking close behind him. And he's kicking up dust, and his dust is falling on you. So it was a metaphor. The teaching of a rabbi was called the rabbi's yoke. That was the teaching and behavior that the disciples were loaded with. So you might have a rabbi who wants you to learn the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Law of Moses, which was usual. Oh, learn it and understand it. And that's heavy. Then along comes the Rabbi Jesus and invites a number of people who would not normally be invited to be anyone's disciple, and says this, "Come to me if you're tired from carrying heavy loads." That's religious loads. "And I will give you rest. Take my yoke, my teaching, and put it on you, and learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in spirit, and you will find rest. For the yoke I will give you is easy, and the load I will put on you is light." I love it when Jesus said, "I am gentle and humble in spirit." And when he's saying that, he's reflecting the nature of God. God is gentle and humble in spirit. So the yoke of a rabbi was always considered hard. We're talking a lifetime of study, but apparently not this Rabbi Jesus. For this rabbi had come to heal the brokenhearted and to find those who were lost, to proclaim the good news about God's love, not place onerous loads and demands on people. Very, very radically different. So it brings us back to, I think, how then should we live, and what should our message be as disciples of Jesus and as a church? In other words, what does it look like to be covered in our rabbi's dust? Maybe it would look like this. I'm paraphrasing the Apostle Paul. The dust of the Rabbi Jesus would be you and me exuding, oozing joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, humility, and self-control. Meaning when someone saw you, they would go, wow, that person's joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, humility, and self-control. Just oozing from you. Right now, as you're sitting worshiping together, you should be oozing from you. Look at the person next to you. Are they oozing? Okay.
Cute. It's hot.
There was in the early years of the church, they used to they started to set up monastic movements. And they always failed. Until one guy came along and said, I'm going to set up a monastic movement, and there's one rule, you can't talk to each other. And when people stopped talking to each other, they were successful. My father used to work up in a bush camp up in northern Canada, and the rules were, during dining, the men weren't allowed to talk to each other. Because once they started to talk, they would start to fight. So don't talk to each other. So if they heard of Jesus, they might say, well, she has been with the Rabbi Jesus. Wouldn't that be a great thing for someone to say about you? They might say, he has walked in the dust of the Rabbi Jesus. And if they hadn't heard of Jesus, they might just say of you, there's something about her, something about him that is out of this world. And they'd be right. So when we speak of a congregation of God's people, the reaction should be the same. There should ooze from us joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, humility, and self-control. So we are oozers. And all we have to do is make sure that what we sing, what we say, how we react doesn't get in the way of the oozing. Are you with me? When a church starts to say to certain people, you are welcome, but you are not. You can come in, but you can't. You can have communion, but you can't have communion. We're not oozing the nature of Jesus. Are you with me? So we walk in the dust of the Rabbi Jesus. How do we do that? We get close. How do we do that? We read his story, his Gospels, his good news. And maybe we pray, Lord, teach me to love as Jesus is loved. Over and over. I know a guy who prayed that one prayer over and over for about a 50-kilometer drive. Teach me to love as Jesus is loved. Another person I knew prayed that one prayer walking 10 kilometers over and over. Teach me to love as Jesus is loved. Brothers and sisters, brothers from other mothers and sisters from other misters, that's our calling. That is what the Rabbi Jesus has called us to do and be. So we read the gospel, the good news stories of Jesus, and we read the stories of the events of his life. As I've said before, there are at least three parties in all the stories. There's Jesus, the person that Jesus is blessing, and then there's the crowd. The crowd is important because it represents you and me. So in our reading this morning, Jesus comes into town and a blind man is crying out for mercy. Some of the crowd tell him to shut up. Jesus doesn't have time for you. So Jesus, the blind man, and the crowd, and you and me. So when you read that encounter, we have to ask, what am I hearing? What am I seeing? How do I feel about what's happening? What do I feel about what Jesus is doing or saying? In other words, you enter into the text and witness and emulate the response of Jesus. Entering into a text is kind of like, you know, on a very hot, anybody had a hot day recently? Yeah, I'm having a very hot day, and you sit down under the shade of a beautiful tree, and you enter into the text, and you allow the text to wash over you, and you enter in, which is prayer. You enter into a dialogue with Jesus. And then you allow the Holy Spirit to awaken you to the heart of God and the nature of Jesus. And maybe, and this is critical, allow our hearts to be broken by the things that break the heart of God. Okay? So if you're reading the paper and you're reading about something and somebody's being attacked or whatever, does this hurt the heart of God? It should hurt my heart then. You're beginning to think like Jesus. So the Apostle Paul says we're supposed to grow up into the full nature of Jesus. Now it does take a while. And I don't think the church at any stage in history has actually achieved that. We've done all sorts of horrible, nasty things to all sorts of people. So it is a process. It's a battle with our human nature. It's overcoming the desire for revenge, etc. It's a constant moving from selfishness to love, and we begin to change. Now, a community of people who seek to be followers of Jesus, it's a good place to learn that in. Because if I bug you or annoy you, you've got to come to me in love and say, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be perspiring like that, you sure? And the church is that body where in love we can say to each other, I think that may not be the right thing. Okay? Now it is a process. I don't play this clip, and some of you have seen it before. It's an older woman, could have been an older man, and she's writing a letter to the girl she used to be as a Christian, as a young Christian, and how judgmental she was as a young Christian, and where she's come to. And she says that it is a process. Thanks, Phil.